It is 6 o'clock. I think we can start the meeting. And we have quite a few guests. It's great to see everybody here. Mo, I'm going to ask you to do the roll call.
Sure. Good evening, Commissioners. We have 4 of you here, so 3 of you are excused. So I will just call roll now. Commissioner Miller is excused, Commissioner Reed is excused, and Commissioner Grabman is excused. So Commissioner Arcuri.
Here with my chinny chin chin.
Commissioner Maya. Here. Vice Chair Glazier.
Here.
And Chair Houghton.
Here.
And we have a quorum.
Thank you very much. Mr. Hester, any changes to the agenda?
No changes to the agenda, Chair Houghton.
All right, thank you very much. Notices that on Friday, August 16th, 2024 at 5 p.m., Mo Graham, our Airport Commission Secretary, duly posted this agenda on the bulletin board at Airport Administration. And moving along for public comment, Mo, have you received any speaker request forms?
I have not.
Okay. So for those in the audience, for any topic not on the agenda, you're welcome to fill out a speaker form and speak on that topic now. So if there's something you wish to discuss that is not on the agenda, please rise and fill out that speaker form. Okay, we're going to stick to the agenda. For those who do fill out a speaker form based on an agenda topic, we give you 3 minutes, and we kind of keep track of your time. But you're welcome to comment. And I see that our city council member table is not occupied, so I think we're going to...
Chair Houghton, if I might, Councilmember Friedman did contact me just before the meeting started to let me know that he was recovering from an illness and would not be here tonight.
Okay, we'll miss him. We'll miss both of them. It's always good to hear their comments. So, all right, boy, I can't believe I'm already on number 5. I'd like to ask Mr. Hastert to provide his airport director report.
Thank you, Chair Houghton. A few items on the list for this evening. The first is we did have our first noise working group meeting, and that is a group of representatives from the different neighborhoods surrounding the airport, from City of Goleta representatives, City of Santa Barbara representatives, and unincorporated county, as well as airport stakeholders. So we have some local pilots, corporate pilots, flight school, different members of that committee. It was a good first meeting. I think that it will get better as we go. There was a lot of different things that were of interest of those members to cover, and so we had to kind of narrow it down to what the next meeting will be about. And so we narrowed that down to looking at the instrument approaches and departures, with one small addition that was added on to work with the FBOs to try to put up some more noise abatement information in the FBOs. So we will be working with the 2 FBOs on that. But everybody was very professional, very polite, no issues. Everybody seemed to get along well, and both were very eager to try to start to address some of those concerns. You may have heard of some of the changes going on with Southwest Airlines, and so I'm happy to report that things are starting to show improvement for us. So the flights to Sacramento were not originally shown on our January schedule, and those are back on the January schedule. And they are making some investment for some improvements in the terminal, so they're looking to be stabilizing a little bit. And then ultimately, they are making some changes. I'm not going to comment on whether you're a fan of their boarding and other processes, but they are making some changes which might affect our marketing program. We've had a difficult time evaluating how well our marketing does because they don't report a lot of the same information that all the other airlines do, and it looks like they're going to start working with Kayak and some of those other groups, so we might actually be more effective with our marketing, or at least not necessarily more effective, but we'll be able to tell how effective we have been. We had a visit with Alaska Airlines. They brought in their entire network planning team, and so it was a visit hosted by the Chamber of Commerce and Visit Santa Barbara with help from airport and staff. First started with a focus on our technology businesses, then focused a little bit on our tourism, and then they enjoyed a few of our local activities. went very well, really pushing for more Bay Area connectivity and San Diego, and I think it was well received, although even just in the short period of time since they've been here, they've already had some changeover in staff, so it's a continual battle to stay connected with the right people and make recommendations, but I can't thank the Chamber or the Commission or the Visit Santa Barbara enough for hosting the event and really bringing the right players together, including Dean from USCSB, SpaceX, a lot of our local businesses, Transform, Cox, so just a lot of really well-connected local businesses. Obviously, we have a master plan presentation tonight for this meeting, but I also wanted to let you know that tomorrow we have a public open house across the street at Direct Relief from 5 until 8. We will have a General Western Aero Hangars public open house to start to see what interest is there and start to bring that project together a little bit. September 17th, that will also be at Direct Relief across the street from 6 until 8. I won't go into the details of the monthly report that's in your packet, but as you can see, the passenger growth continues to grow, and we've set more record numbers with TSA throughput, and so it continues to ramp up. With that, I'm also pleased to say that Sarah and her team finished the project for the rental car facility, and so if you haven't been over there to see the new parking area and the extra spaces, it turned out very nice, and we're very pleased with the outcome. With a little bit of temporary rerouting of people along the street that people were not super pleased with, although I will say the walk is still a lot shorter than our major airports that people fly in and out of, but we get spoiled here with that really quick connection. But that quick connection to the parking lot is back, and it turned out very nice. Angie has been working with one of our local partners, Direct Relief, across the street, as I might say for a third time now, we have a new display in the terminal on the north side at Gate 5. So if you're flying through there, check it out and let me know your thoughts. But it's kind of interesting. We have a picture of their building on the window, and it says "We are here" because they are literally right there. And then a little bit of some window clings along the jetway. So a little bit different than we've done before, but good community partner, and I think it turned out nice. And last but not least, I am currently the president of the California Airports Council, which is the Part 139 Commercial Service Airports group for California. All of the airport directors get together quarterly, and we have a meeting. This meeting happened to be hosted in Santa Barbara because this last meeting that I attended happened to be in Santa Barbara because they host one meeting at the president's hometown airport. Couldn't have been better timing. Our federal update was given by the Associate Administrator for the FAA for Airports that flew in direct from Washington, D.C. to give an update to the group. Because of travel time to get back to Washington, D.C., she did a full personal tour of the airport with somebody else from her staff in D.C. and two of our local L.A. Regional representatives the week after we put in some grant applications for our terminal. So very good timing, and I think that went very well. And that's all I have for the director's report.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Hastert. Commissioners, any questions or clarifications?
Yeah, great timing. It's good to be lucky and good. The two times you mentioned Direct Relief, are we using that for the meeting just because they volunteered the space, or is there a connection with them on that?
So we're using it because they have volunteered the space, and they've always wanted to offer that up. But the main reason is this room is a little bit small for what we are looking to accomplish, and it's very close to our facility here, but also accommodates much more people and is a little bit more open and airy.
Yeah, that's awesome because it also gives them exposure, and and then the meeting that's going to happen regarding the General Western hangars is a announced community meeting to kind of just, can you describe that a little bit more?
Yeah, so we're still putting together the details, but it's really to see what interest is out there in the community from those different categories of, hey, I would like to support this project, either monetarily or in some other way, or I have a proposed use for those projects, which includes support or not, or hey, I have a good use for those for that project, but I would like to partner with somebody to help fund that. So there's a lot of different categories there, and we're trying to narrow down the list.
Thank you.
Commissioner Maya.
Yeah, one other project that I think was undone last time this commission met is now done, and that's the taxiway renaming. Is that project completed?
So thank you for that, and I get confused with which ones I've updated at the meetings or not, but yes, that project is completed, and I can't say enough about Sarah's team, but then also the support team for the project with Mead and Hunt, different division of who you'll hear from tonight, but still the same company. That was a project that I was very nervous about, because when you're changing all of the designations for most of the taxiways out there, it could lead to some possible confusion. But Mike Smith, our operations manager, was very good about getting the information out and putting out NOTAMs, and I have not heard of anything negative that happened with that project. And I just checked on all of my charts and everything. It seems to be all updated with the FAA now, so a very good project that could have had a big impact and didn't. So
Great, thanks.
Commissioners, any additional questions? Just one comment. I'm excited about the General Western hangars, and periodically we meet people in the community that have some amazing aviation collections. And so I would encourage those in the room, if you know such individuals, that they should contact us and maybe take a look at the hangars, because maybe they'd like to have half a hangar dedicated to their collection, and that we'd certainly encourage those conversations. So very interested in the future of those hangars, and perhaps they could become an air museum of Santa Barbara. So, but we have to fill it with noteworthy materials. So I'll keep that in mind. Okay, is there any additional speaker forums for this comment? For this? All right. We'll move on to the consent calendar. And the consent calendar, I know the commissioners have already read the items. The first item is the minutes to be approved from May 15th. We have 2 lease agreements, Pacific Coast Tree Experts, Inc., and lease agreement for L3 Technologies, which is a short-term lease that certainly we can talk about if that's needed. Do any of the commissioners have any questions or desire any clarifications on the consent calendar topics? Commissioner Glazer?
This all still falls within our ranges, right, of the pre-approved lease rates?
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions on the consent calendar? Okay. Mo, are there any speaker request forms for the consent calendar? Okay. So I'm going to ask for a motion for approval of the consent calendar. Okay, Commissioner Curry
Second.
and Commissioner Glazer. I'd like to call for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
We have any opposed? Apparently not. We have a quorum of 4. So the motion did pass, Mo. All right, I'd like to call on Director Hastert again to introduce item number 9, the Santa Barbara Airport Master Plan Update.
Thank you, Chair Houghton. I'm going to pass this to Jessica Metzger, our airport planner, and she will go over the staff portion of this project with some assistance from our consultants, Mead and Hunt, who are here in the audience as well.
Thank you, Director Hastert. Mr. Chair and Commissioners, good evening. I wanted to let you know just a little history before we jump into this. So the first time we talked about this project with you was June of 2022. It's been a little while since we've been working on this. And that included over 20 meetings with the public and with the community, both through our technical committee and our community committee, and public meetings with yourselves, the Planning Commission, and the City Council. We also held a couple open houses, one of which Director Hastert alluded to, which will be tomorrow night from 6 to 8 at Direct Relief. And this is the last meeting with you on the draft final plan, but I want to make sure that everyone knows that it's not the last meeting on the master plan update. We will be continuing on the process, as you will see in slides that are going to be presented, with the environmental review of this draft plan. So with that, we'll start with the first slide, which shows our team. If it changes. Yeah. Thank you, Mo. So we have, of course, Director Hastrett, and then Sarah Isa, myself, and then our supervising engineer, who's not here tonight, Brad Klingsing, and then Tiana Herrera. And that was our master plan update team for the airport. And then on our meet and hunt team, we have Corbett Smith, who's here and will be taking over the presentation as our project manager, and Hardy Bullock as the deputy project manager, as well as Brian Moore, who's not here tonight. And so with that, I'll pass this over to Corbett.
Thank you, Jessica. It's a pleasure to be back here with you all tonight. As Jessica mentioned, my name is Corbett Smith. I'm the Meet and Hunt Project Manager. We've come a long way with this airport master plan. This is our last presentation to the Airport Commission. As Jessica mentioned, we will be having a public open house tomorrow night to give a update to the public with a series of boards that essentially will cover the same topics as tonight. So a brief agenda of what we'll discuss tonight. A number of these are recap items that we'll just touch on briefly, but then there are some new content. We'll touch on what is a master plan as a brief reminder, the timeline of where we are in the project, refresher on what the preferred development concept is, the airport layout plan, the noise contours, and then some of the new content we'll talk about is the major projects to come out of the master plan, their costs, funding options, and essentially what is a capital plan. And then we'll close with next steps. So I won't go through all of this again. I know you've seen it several times. The main takeaway is that a master plan is really a 20-year planning document, a visioning document. It's not an engineering level schematic, but essentially a reservation of space. Where should things go over the next 20 years? What is the forecast of activity that we're expecting the airport to experience over the next 20 years? And what might be needed to meet that activity? Also another reminder that we did bring forward the guiding principles from the prior airport master plan incorporated into and throughout this airport master plan update. So the master plan schedule and where we are. All of those blue boxes are the major elements or deliverable points throughout the master plan. So we started on the left with an inventory, developed an environmental overview, which gave us a good idea of constraints, developed that 20-year aviation forecast I mentioned, identified the facility requirements we need to meet that 20-year forecast, then generated alternatives, looking at different ways to meet those requirements, conducted the noise exercise under the land use planning task, developed a financial feasibility chapter, which is in draft form in the airport's hands now, and have a draft at this point of the airport layout plan. So that is where we are now at the conclusion of the major master plan elements with the airport layout plan. I think as Jessica mentioned, we have had a very robust public outreach process throughout this entire planning effort. We had two different technical input committees, one being a technical input committee, one being a community input committee. We met with each of those 4 times. And then the public open house tomorrow will be the 3rd public open house held for the master plan. As Jessica also mentioned, this is not the conclusion of the entire effort. There will be this comprehensive environmental overview beginning after this airport layout plan is submitted to the FAA. It's essentially all part of the same project, just logistically different contracts and contracting mechanisms. So just a refresher on the preferred development concept. It's really important that we think about there being 2 different types of development projects. One being types that we've identified as compliance projects, and those are things like taxiway geometry. where we're showing those as future projects in order to comply with FAA design standards. The other type of project, being those necessary to meet the 20-year demand, are things like additional general aviation hangars, a parking garage, a long-term, beyond the 20-year planning period, terminal expansion. So there is two different kinds. They're all on this graphic. Happy to answer any questions about specifics, but we did also address them in the prior meeting, so I will move on if there is not questions on this. Go ahead.
I can't recall the answer from our previous meeting if it was asked. Obviously, unleaded avgas is an issue. Is there accommodations in here for transition to unleaded fuel while keeping leaded fuel?
Great point. We identified a project as fuel farm improvements, essentially being able to double the fuel farm capacity at the airport. We didn't go so far as to identify the specific fuel in the tanks, but there is room, costs, and a conceptual design for how those tanks could be expanded to accommodate it.
Very good, thanks.
So next up is the airport layout plan. And from your view of this on the screen, it probably looks like a giant mess, but this is a very technical plan set that is eventually approved by the FAA. It is a document that shows everything on airport property that exists as well as planned. And there is a lot of FAA standards on here, so a lot of very esoteric surfaces, a lot of airspace surface involvement in the airport layout plan. You'll note that this is sheet 1 of 20. I think there are 8 or 10 sheets dedicated to just airspace surfaces and showing where objects are relative to the airspace surfaces. One of the reasons it's very important for the airport is that the projects shown on an airport layout plan do not establish eligibility for FAA funding, but in order to receive FAA funding, they must be on an airport layout plan. So it's the 20-year vision of the airport that the FAA signs off, approves, and agrees that potentially the projects on here could be eligible for FAA funding. We'll do just a quick recap of the noise contours that we developed. In black, the larger set of contours are the baseline contours from the prior airport master plan. The blue solid line is the baseline contours from this master plan update, and the green dash line is the 20-year projected noise contour resulting from this master plan. So you'll notice that there is a bit of a difference, and that the prior airport master plan contours were actually larger. The main driver for that difference is really twofold. One, the number of operations. The baseline of the prior master plan had more operations than the baseline of this master plan update, and that's partially related to the second component, which is the fleet mix. So at the time that the prior master plan was conducted, the airlines were flying much smaller in capacity aircraft. They were also louder, so their frequency was much more often than today, where you have larger aircraft that carry much more passengers and probably on a less frequent overall basis than the airlines were operating the prior master plan. A couple other changes to note on the noise contours is with the assumption of the eventual closure of runway 15 left, 33 right. The contours to the south near the shoreline shift over to the one remaining crosswind runway. And then there is a future sort of roundish bulge in the northeast corner of the airport, and that is where we're assuming sometime in the next 20-year period a vertiport would come online and aircraft would operate to that vertiport. Any questions on noise before I move forward?
I have
Yes.
just one, maybe a comment, with the arrival of Delta here flying the A220-300, Obviously, your firm is calculating that more airlines are going to be using quieter aircraft, and hence the reason why you've made that noise footprint smaller.
Exactly right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's good, very good.
That's all the trend that we are seeing nationwide is the reduction in the small regional jets and the shift to the larger 737 Airbus aircraft.
Very good, thanks.
So what does this all cost? And it's significant. So all of those projects combined on the preferred development plan total to about $179 million over the next 20 years. We've taken an estimate as to how we think some of these projects should be phased. This, I should mention, is in no way set in stone. The airport staff goes through their ACIP update every year and makes revisions, moving projects up and down on the priority list. So it's very possible that things could move as the years progress. But essentially a short-term, a mid-term, and a long-term breakdown of all those projects on the development plan. You'll notice some of the big ticket items are hangars, and that is simply due to the cost of construction these days. Steel is extraordinarily expensive, as well as just construction in general. All of these cost estimates were developed by engineers and professional cost estimators. So they should be accurate and conservative numbers. Hopefully, when some of these projects come to design and build, you can do them for less money. But we wanted to give you a realistic and conservative estimate. Another big ticket item is the parking garage that we've put in the long-term 10 to 20 year category, estimated to be about $45 million. So there are a number of funding mechanisms for these projects. The good news is that the airport does not need to assume funding all of these themselves out of their airport fund. And we can discuss some of those now. So first and foremost, there is the FAA Airport Improvement Grants, and there's two types of those grants. There's discretionary and entitlement. Entitlement are funds that the airport is guaranteed based on the number of enplaned passengers, so passengers that fly through your terminal. The discretionary funds are just that, they're discretionary. So it has to do with the amount of funding that the region gets, and airports within the region have to compete for those funds based on project eligibility and a ranking criteria of those projects. For the purposes of the financial feasibility chapter, which the airport has and will be on the airport website within a week or two, we assume that none of these projects are funded with discretionary grants, all with our other options, including entitlements and the other that I'll talk about in a moment. So the next category is PFCs, or passenger facility charges. Those are essentially add-ons to the tickets that airlines sell for the travelers to travel through your airport. Those go into a pot of money that the airport can apply through a grant process to use those funds for certain projects. And similarly, the customer facility charge is an add-on to the rental cars that are rented out of the airport. Then, of course, there is the airport fund itself. Other sources of revenue, like the non-aeronautical commercial across Hollister. And then bonds are certainly an option to help with funding, as well as private investment. And private investment will likely be a significant option, especially for the hangars in the future, as hangars are an opportunity that airports have been able to attract outside business interests in developing those hangars with a stake, obviously. Any questions about funding options? So if you dive into the financial feasibility chapter, you'll see a lot more detail than what I'm covering tonight. But one of the takeaway points is just how we're estimating those funding sources breaking down over the future. And you'll see that private funding, we have estimated at just over half of that entire 179 million, and that is associated with our estimate that they would be involved in the hangar construction. The next largest category would be bonds, which would be mainly associated with the parking garage, as there is some significant constraints on funding options for parking garages. So we're projecting that it would be a combination of bonds as well as the CFCs that are collected from the rental car companies in conjunction with airport funds. But a large portion of that parking garage would likely be financed or recommended to be financed with a bond. As I mentioned, this is all subject to change. This is one scenario. Things can drastically change as the years progress. There may be additional federal grant opportunities that come available that we are not aware of at this point. So this just gives a perspective of really how we project those big expensive items being broken down by funding source. You'll notice that the airport fund itself is relatively small, really only at just shy of 3%. Any questions on that? Okay, so then we'll just touch quickly on the next steps. As I mentioned, we will be revising the airport layout plan and then submitting it to the FAA for their official approval. There's usually a review and response period where the FAA typically has a few comments. We address those and then submit it for their actual approval. The Mead and Hunt team will revise and finalize any changes that need to occur in the narrative chapters that we've delivered thus far, provide a nice complete package of chapters that can be hosted on the airport's website. And then, as Jessica mentioned, the airport will begin their comprehensive environmental review of the master plan. And I'll turn it back to Jessica.
Thank you, Corbett. So as Corbett said, we have different budget and financial information. So the majority of the funds come from an FAA distribution through the Airport Improvement Program each year. And this covers around 91% of the project costs. And then specific project funding is identified at time of design. So at this point in time, today, this year, we have that list of the first priorities, the short term, but that could change, as Corbett says, based on various different things that happen with that list and with funding sources, things coming down from Congress and whatnot. And then, as I'm sure most of you know, this region was the driving force behind Earth Day, and sustainability has always been very important to the city of Santa Barbara, and it's actually written into our general plan. And so these are just some things that we are following our mission of sustainability at the airport through the master plan, including following our local coastal program, which we're also updating right now, to make sure that we protect our natural resource in the Goleta Slough, and also looking at incorporating sea level rise and climate change into the planning process for these future projects. We're also looking at the electrification of aircraft with the eVTOL and also the vertiport, and also, as Commissioner Maya said, looking into sustainable aviation fuel. And then through this process, one of our sections is about updating our recycling, reuse, and waste reduction plan. And we worked closely with our sustainability department, which was actually created about 3 years ago at the city, in reviewing that plan and incorporating it. So our recommendation to you today is just to receive the status update on the master plan and give us any comments that you may have. So with that, we can turn it over to you for any questions, and Corbett and I will be happy to answer along with the other staff on the team.
Thank you, Ms. Metzger. A very good presentation by yourself and Mead and Hunt. Appreciate it. I'm going to ask the commissioners. I'm certain there'll be questions and interest in clarifications, and we'll start off with Vice Chair Glazier.
Thank you, Chair. We touched upon it a little bit in here, and I know we've discussed at length terminal expansion. I didn't see it in the financial projections. Is that something that's kept separate from this plan, or how does that work?
I'll let Mead and Hunt answer that, and then we can add addition to that.
Yeah, great question. Thank you. So as I mentioned, this is a 20-year master plan. What we did as part of the facility requirements was introduce this concept called planning activity levels. Mm-hmm. We included a level beyond the 20-year forecast of activity, specifically of enplanements of passengers, because we wanted to look at a number outside the 20-year period and make sure that we were covering all our bases. So that's where that long-term terminal expansion came from, was accommodating a number, I won't even put a year on it, outside of the 20-year period. Because of that, it's shown in essentially a reservation of space. It's a very conceptual block reservation, and we did not cost estimate that far out.
Okay. Commissioner Maya.
One more question about the fuel, alternative fuel and unleaded fuel. I noticed that it's in the midterm, 6 to 10 years out. Is there a potential for that to move to the nearer term? Should it be required? I know there's a lot of uncertainty around that, and it's sort of we've been told at the national level that it's for the past 15 years been in the near term, and it's turned out not to be. So it sounds like it may materialize, but it may not. And if it does, are we ready?
It definitely has the potential to move on the time frame.
Yeah.
I might let airport staff talk about their thoughts on that.
So obviously it's not quite commercially available yet, but as through the CAC's focus on sustainable aviation fuel, meaning more of the jet fuel side of things, there's a desire to partner up with some of the bills that are being proposed to try to limit aviation, to have them maybe focus more on providing more sustainable aviation fuel in California. So I would anticipate as we move forward with the FBO redevelopment, you will probably see some of those FBOs maybe even propose how they would handle sustainable aviation fuel or unleaded fuels. On the unleaded side, the FAA is still evaluating different products. There's the Eagle program that is going through all of that. Very recently, I was contacted by one of the one of the producers of one of the versions of unleaded fuel, and I put them in touch with the Santa Barbara Aviators just to get a feeling for what the need is here. So I could see that moving forward even quicker, but that would be in a partnership with our FBOs, and obviously going through our process for FBO redevelopment will impact those timelines.
Very good, thanks.
Commissioner Curry.
What do 1-5 left being closed? Are we going to repurpose that? Is there thoughts about what happens with that pavement?
There is, and if somebody has the clicker and can go back to that preferred development concept, ultimately there would be a new parallel taxiway constructed partially with the old runway, but also partially not. You can see that thick black line that is near where 1-5 left, 3-3 right would have been. We set that at a location where FAA standards are met for runway to taxiway separation, but also to accommodate that potential long-term terminal expansion. So all the pieces would fit together and accommodate each other. Regardless of the terminal, or I should say independent of the terminal, you wouldn't have to construct that full-length parallel immediately. The runway could be repurposed for a taxiway in the meantime. It really comes down to what projects materialize first. But yes, there is a reuse of pavement. Some demolition also, but some reuse.
Just curious.
And if you notice, in addition to the issues with the runway and funding, that was the main focus of taking that runway out of service. It does open up some real estate for us, so also allows for some additional hangars that are shown kind of under the approach for that closed runway as well.
And then is there, who, I imagine it's you folks, think about at what level of sea rise does all of this not matter anymore? So we're basically a sea level airport, and if the sea level rose 5 feet, I don't think we'll have an airport anymore, or at least we'll be, like, is there, where in the process do we, is that considered to the point of, well, there's all these improvements or things or changes we're going to make, but if the trend of sea level rise continues at some particular rate, then at this point of sea level rise, some of this stops mattering as much because we're a sea level airport.
That's a
Yes.
great point.
So, Commissioner, if you don't mind, Corbett. So, at this point in time, we just finished our vulnerability assessment for our sea level rise plan. And that looked at all our facilities and rated where we were most vulnerable on the airfield based on 3 different levels of sea level rise. The interesting thing is that when we went and put all of the science in the data models, we are more vulnerable to climate change with increased precipitation than we are with sea level rise. So the next steps over the next 2 years, we'll be looking at the adaptation plan, which will once again take into account all of those facilities. And that's when that kind of data will come together with the master plan. It'll actually be pretty perfect in timing because that's when the environmental review will be wrapping up for this as well. And then additionally, Mead and Hunt worked with us on our drainage master plan, which you'll be seeing next month or the month after. And we've incorporated that data into the sea level rise and the master plan plans.
Thanks, Jessica. And so the reason that precipitation is the issue is because it's got to go somewhere, and if it doesn't go anywhere, it stays on the airfield like it did this last winter.
That's correct.
And the reason that is more of a driver than sea level rise, like what is the, say, length of 2.5? What altitude, and I should know this myself, but where is that MSL wise? 12 feet.
Yes.
No kidding. Huh. All right. All right. So precipitation is really the bigger issue, which then ties back to drainage because it's got to go somewhere, and it's hard to make that happen when you're so close to sea level. Thank you.
Commissioners, any additional questions, clarifications? I have one. Bouncing back to the sustainable fuels. So the next generation of sustainable fuels is hydrogen. And we actually have a couple startups here in Santa Barbara. One of them is one of our leases that are hatching hydrogen fuel companies for aviation. I don't think they're thinking 5 to 6 years out. I think they're thinking 2 to 3 years. Have you and your firm been looking at this issue?
We have been reading about it and researching it. We have not, to my knowledge, done any facility planning at an airport yet for it. But you're right. It is being talked about. There's a lot of interest in it.
Yeah.
There's discussion of whether or not that's going to replace electric and battery, and we'll shift more to hydrogen instead. There's a lot to be seen.
Yeah. So it may be a good idea to maybe have a working group just to discuss this, because these folks are right across the street in 6100 Hollister, and so they'd be happy to talk about this. And it may be very worthwhile for your firm to be exposed to this for multiple airports. But you're talking hydrogen, being spent for the generation of electric airplanes. So this would be a very good place to start. Santa Barbara is an innovation center, and it would be good to maybe get this in the plan just at the last minute. So follow up on that. Okay, any other questions from the commissioners?
Another question along those lines. The eVTOL circle that was over here, and we think about big construction projects and buildings, we always worry about how much power. And I don't know where the main, how much we have coming to the airport now. But in consideration of that area, was it also considered about bringing in the power necessary to be able to charge whatever it is we're charging?
Yes, we did look at some of the infrastructure networks. I can't recall exactly where the closest point was off the top of my head. It was a consideration, though, in that siting location. I can also tell you, though, that there's a lot of unknown about that vertiport. We don't have a operator in mind yet with a specific aircraft type. It's really if one comes here tomorrow and knocks on your door and wants to put one in, where would it go? So there's still a lot of unknown. We actually had a discussion with the FAA about how to show that on the airport layout plan because there is so many unknowns. So for the airport layout plan purposes, it's going to be very generic, just a colored polygon labeled future vertiport. But there is some thought put into the size of it. It would accommodate some of the largest rotor diameter eVTOLs that are on the market today.
Okay, thank you. One final question, and this is maybe generally for Chris or yourself or both. Maybe even more for Chris as he's president of the California. There are other close to sea level airports, certainly in the nation and certainly here in California. And recalling my time in Hawaii where as the state of Hawaii thinks about what they're going to do with the islands, there's the final resort, which is retreat, move uphill essentially. Are you aware of any, and not specifically with this our airport, but any FAA long-term thoughts about airports that are so endangered that they would have to retreat or just?
So you've caught me a little bit off guard. I did read a report that listed the most threatened airports and kind of some of the thoughts behind each one of them. But off the top of my head, I don't remember the details on that, but I'd be happy to share that with you following the meeting to
Yeah, I'm curious. So there is actually at least a,
I read a
California or
report.
nationwide?
So I don't remember, off the top of my head, I don't remember what all airports it covered, but several of the airports were obviously in California.
Right.
So,
all right, thanks. Thank you.
All right. Commissioners, any other questions, clarifications? All right. Mo, have you received any speaker request cards? Oh boy, we have a quiet visitation group here today. Okay, so forever hold your peace. If there's no comments on the master plan, we'll move forward.
I have one question.
Please fill out a speaker card.
I just want to know if that deck can be found online that they're using for presentation.
Yes, so we have a master plan update website. It is flysba.com and then /MPU. And these presentations will be posted next week on the website. All previous presentations that we've done too, when I spoke about those other meetings, are up there currently.
Thank you. Okay, we'll move forward. This was a presentation only, so there's no vote required. I'd like to call on Director Hastert to introduce item number 10, fiscal year 2025 airport property lease rates.
thank you, Chair Howard, and I am going to delegate this one to John Feldhans, our airport properties manager, with his first presentation for your group.
All right.
Yay, me. So, John Feldhans, the properties manager for Santa Barbara. One of the tasks that my division has is managing all the leases and developing the lease rates for the non-aviation commercial rates, mostly the property over on the north side of Hollister. So we looked at, we pulled some reports from, I believe, Hayes Commercial, and I want to say it's Radius, but so we looked at quarter 3 of 2023 and compared that to quarter 1 of 2024. So for leasing, for office leasing, Goleta showed a 10% increase in their gross rent, going up to $2.46 a square foot. Their industrial leasing increased by 50%, going up to $2.62 a square foot. Retail leasing went up 9% to $3.53. So a lot of our buildings are older, on the older side. If you guys aren't aware, our newest building, I think, is the 6100 Hollisters that were built. Mature building. There you go. I like it. So basically, what we did for these new rates is I applied the 2023 CPI, which is 3.4%, to the fiscal 24 rates to get me the 25 rates. So, and I can read them if you want me to, but it'd be a lot of numbers that if you want me to read it. And that's it. Pretty short and sweet.
I know we're going to have questions from our commissioners. Who's going first? Commissioner Lee, Maya.
Oh, I was just going to say this all looks very reasonable, in line with market, and makes a lot of sense.
That's what I strive to be. Logical, makes sense.
Especially for our mature buildings,
Yes.
which have lots of character.
That they do.
Leaks, and character. You know,
Yeah.
As I recall, the last time I was here, you were interim property manager. Was that correct? Or-
I
No?
It was May, so I was appointed in April. So May would
Okay.
have been my first.
Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah.
If you didn't
Either
already
way.
get that. Do we have still very high occupancy percentage, do we
Yes. Yeah. I only have one, going to be probably 2 vacancies come the end of September.
not? Do you, in round numbers, know what the total available total available space to be leased is?
Like square footage wise?
Yeah.
I don't have that off the top of my head.
Okay,
I
but
can get it for you.
So I have to apologize. That was actually in the letter, and I took out some of the details because thought there was too much in there. But we can get that information to you.
yeah, I don't need to follow it, but we hit still and have remained. I still remember the conversations we had at the commission about building 6100 and the fear that we were being fiscally risky, that it wouldn't get leased. I still remember those conversations, and being someone who was often leasing buildings, it's just like an empty closet. You can always use more closet, always use more buildings. So we've remained steady, and our view with what appears to be a slowing economy does not change the fact that we're very optimistic about those occupancy rates. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah, we got a long list of people that are interested even now with us being full. So we got a long list of people that we can go
Yeah.
to.
One of the things that I've asked John to start to look at is phase 2 of the 6100 Hollister. And when I started, I was told that the project doesn't pencil out for whatever reasons. And with a list that long and some of the opportunities that we have over there, I think there might be creative ways to make that pencil out, whether that's private investment coming in and doing a project or other methods. One of Chair Houghton's focuses has been on technology and things coming out of UCSB. And a lot of times they have grant funding available that can help with some of those
Right.
projects. So I think that there is a phase 2 in the not too distant future, but that's one of the things we're focusing on trying to look at now.
Thanks, Director Hessert and John.
Commissioners, additional questions? Vice Chair Glazier.
So just to be clear, both the lower end and the upper end were increased by that CPI factor, right?
Correct.
Okay. And do you feel this gives you enough flexibility to make sure that we keep this as close to 100% as possible?
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just want to give you the range and the flexibility to get it done. So thank you very much for your hard
That's good.
work.
No worries.
Any additional comments from the commissioners? Well, I'll just expound a bit on what Airport Director Hastert mentioned on space, and in the future, I'm wishful for vision here. So there isn't a week or two that goes by that I'm not involved in a conversation with someone from UCSB, most notably the California Nano Systems Institute, which is the new name for the Office of Tech Transfer and Intellectual Property. The concern we have is we have these brilliant engineers, chemists, scientists, biologists coming out of UCSB with amazing doctorates, amazing projects, and they're starting up companies, and there's no place for them to grow. And they're going up to Silicon Valley and the Bay Area, and then they're going to Los Angeles, and they're going to Arizona. we need a vision that's going to take a consultant that does this as their main focus on building what I see as the UCSB Research Park. And we can start at the corner of the northeast side of all of our buildings over there north of Hollister and start moving to the south and west in an organized, planned, master planned community of office spaces that will fetch much higher prices than 35 cents a foot for land, raw land, and $2.06 for finished buildings. I mean, there's such a need for these specialty buildings that look a lot like what we've just built in Hollister, but with the ability to accommodate very heavy-duty HVAC. And we should be thinking about this now because it's going to take us 10 or 15, 20 years to complete it. And now's the time when we have such a young airport director, so he can start it and he can finish it. But right. But I want you to be visionary. I want you to be thinking where we're going with this. And I once lived in a master planned community called Westlake Village, and I remember First Neighborhood. And look at it today. And I think we have to have the same vision for this myriad of, how did Commissioner Curry describe them? Mature buildings, that we can really do something outstanding here that will be, seen by everyone in the country saying, wow, airport with all this land and decrepit buildings next to this world-class university had the vision to build this research park. So I'm laying down the gauntlet. So I really would like to see big thinking here. So on that note, I'll ask Mo, do we have any speaker cards for questions from our audience? Okay. Such a quiet group of visitors. Boy. Okay, so we don't have any more questions or clarifications from the commissioners. We have no public comment. I'm going to ask for a motion for approval of this recommendation. Commissioners.
I move to approve.
Okay, Commissioner Maya. And do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, Vice Chair is seconded. I'm going to ask for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay.
Okay, we have none opposed, so the motion did pass, Mo. And on that note, I'm going to end the meeting at a pretty good record time considering the master plan and the lease rates. We're ending the meeting at 7 p.m. Thank you for everyone's contributions and hard work. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, thanks.